Hey everybody, welcome back to the Whiteboard Finance Show. Today I have a personal friend and a great guest. He's absolutely crushing it. You may know him as Minority Mindset on YouTube. His name is actually Jaspreet Singh, who is the host. I know he doesn't want to be the face of Minority Mindset, but whether he likes it or not, he is. And he's helped so many of you on YouTube. Right now, Minority Mindset is sitting at 863,000 subscribers with over 4 million views a month right now. Absolutely crushing it. Nice to have you on, Jaspreet. How you doing, buddy?
Marco, what's up, man? Happy to be here.
Great, man. Great. It's awesome. It's always nice speaking with you. You and I have spoken privately over the phone a couple times. You're in the Rust Belt. You're in Detroit. I'm in Cleveland. Love talking to people from the Midwest and from the Rust Belt because we always keep it real for the most part. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourselves. I've been a huge fan of your show and also your program and your brand in general and also the mindset, no pun intended. So just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself if they don't know who you are.
Sure. So my name again, Jaspreet Singh. I'm the founder of Minority Mindset. And Minority Mindset is essentially the mindset of thinking different than the majority of people. So we talk all about all things money management, investing, and it's all about thinking different than the majority because if you're following the majority, chances are you're doing something wrong.
Absolutely. I love your slogan. I'm probably going to butcher it, but if you give a regular person, a couple $100, they're going to come back with a pair of Jordans or sneakers. You give the minority a couple $100, they're going to come back with, a business or a minimum viable product or just something else to actually grow that money, maybe to $1,000.
We say if you give the majority $200, they'll come back with a pair of shoes. If you give the minority $200, they'll come back with 2,000.
That's right.
How do you use that money? But it all starts with that mindset.
Absolutely. So you were an entrepreneur, I believe, before you were even on YouTube. Why don't you take us down that rabbit hole real quick?
Well, yeah, I think I was born an entrepreneur. I think I was kind of had that bug when I was like really young. So I grew up in a traditional Indian house. Like my parents are immigrants from India. And my grandparents were refugees in a state in India called Punjab. So I grew up with kind of my grandparents teaching me the importance of understanding how much you have, because my grandparents, when they were refugees, they had nothing. Like my grandfather, when he got kicked out of his home, he didn't even have shoes. And so I grew up kind of learning the importance of very little, like the importance of having anything. And then when I was growing up, growing up in an Indian house, every Indian parent tells their kid that if you want to become successful, you got to become a doctor. My parents were no different. So since I was a kid, my parents told me that you need to become a doctor. And I figured, okay, sounds good. I will become a doctor. That way I can make a lot of money and I can take care of my family and give back to my parents. Sounds good.
Yep.
So that was kind of the mindset that I was raised with. But at the same time, I always had this entrepreneurial bug. Like when I was in elementary school, I became a paper boy. I was making 7 cents a house delivering papers. I was cutting people's lawns. And it was just a hobby. Like I didn't really think anything of it. But then when I got into late middle school, early high school, I went to India, Punjab, and I got this drum. It's called a dhol. And I bought this just for fun because I was really into the music. And I was playing this drum and I actually ended up playing it for my uncle's wedding. And the DJ was like, hey, you're pretty good. Do you want to play at weddings? I'll pay you. I was like, sure. So I was 12 or 13 and I started playing at weddings. I was making like $50 for a wedding to play this drum. And it was fun. And I got to meet a lot of DJs and kind of get into this wedding business. And then towards like the middle end of my high school career, I got to know a lot of the DJs and they were like, why don't we start throwing teen parties? And I was like, all right, cool. So then got into this kind of event planning side of things. So I started hosting these teen parties when I was in late high school. And then I was like, all right, you know what? Now it's time for me to buckle down, start studying properly and become a doctor because now it's time for me to go to college. I didn't know what college was like. I didn't grow up with my parents telling me, this is what's going to happen in college because, they didn't go to college here. So I go to college thinking that everybody goes to college to study and everybody is spending their Friday nights in the chemistry lab doing chemistry reactions. I was like way wrong. I went to college. I had like 5 things with me. I had a microwave. I had a sleeping bag. I had some clothes and I had a backpack and maybe something else. I didn't even have a towel. I didn't have a blanket. I slept in my sleeping bag first part of my freshman year. And everybody's partying. And I'm like, what the heck? None of y'all have money. You're blowing all this money at parties. What is going on here? So that's when I had the idea to now take this event planning business that I was running in high school take it to college. And now I was building a real company because now I had this like real established event planning company I started in college where I was hosting parties. And then we started growing to concerts and shows. And we had events every single week. I mean, sometimes twice a week. And that's how I got into the entrepreneurship side of things. Then I started making money, started investing in real estate, and did a whole bunch of things. And then years go on, eventually created Minority Mindset as a way to kind of teach things that I wish I knew when I was growing up, to create a community for people that want to learn about money, want to learn about investing, want to learn about these things, but maybe didn't have the resources to learn them.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah, I think that what you preach and your genuine background actually shows up in all of your videos, because you always struck me as just a real dude, just a genuine guy, and that translates to trust, right? I feel like you and I present information very similarly. You know, we both have like the backdrop, we both have the the whiteboard
the
sometimes.
Backdrop.
Exactly. Yeah, but you have you write with markers sometimes, which I couldn't do. My handwriting's too bad, so I need the dry erase board. I got to be able to erase a lot. So yeah, tell us how you decided to actually go from, event planning, DJing. I thought you were doing some stuff with socks too, like some creative socks, to all the way from that to, YouTube, talking about personal finance, thinking different, being different, entrepreneurship, investing, things like that.
So it was all unintentional. So yeah, I mean, I never had a plan to go onto YouTube or do anything like that. I was doing I did a bunch of things. Like I'm a real believer in the ready, fire, aim philosophy,
Yep.
meaning I do, and then I think about why I did it and how to fix it. I'm much more of a doer than a thinker. And so I got involved in a bunch of different businesses because that's how I learned. So I got involved with real estate wholesaling. I got involved in Amazon. I got involved with a whole bunch of other businesses. And then I created this product. So I had an idea to create these water resistant athletic socks because I hate wet socks. And so I created this, spent like a long time. It was more than a year. I think it might have been a year and a half to develop this sock. Worked with a bunch of different companies, which was his own kind of thing. But I created the sock, launched it, and I launched it through Kickstarter. It was a crowdfunding campaign. And what happened was this marketing company reached out to me and they were promising all these like huge results, huge gains, made all these bold promises. I was a little skeptical, but they were like, we'll give you 100% money back guarantee. I was like, all right, if I can guarantee this, then fine, I will invest this money. And it was a few $1,000s, which was quite a bit of money back then. And that was most of our marketing budget. So I gave them the money. And then the day after I gave them the money, I had this really bad feeling in my stomach. We hadn't launched yet. They hadn't spent $1. I was in the gym and I was like, I was doing the chest fly. I don't know why I remember this so vividly, but I'm doing the chest fly and I just had this really bad feeling in my stomach. So I called up the guy. I was like, hey man, let's just cancel this. Just why don't you give me the money back before you spend any money? No hard feelings. I just rather do the marketing myself. He's like, okay, no problem. Give me a few minutes. He puts me on hold and I'm on hold for a while. And then the phone just goes beep, beep, beep. And I'm like, uh-oh, something's wrong.
No.
So I call back. The phone's not going through, said this number has been disconnected or whatever. I call back the other 2 numbers that I have. None of them are picking up. I'm getting blocked on all these numbers. And eventually I found out that I was scammed. It was a fake company that took my money and ran. Talked to an attorney and my money was gone. But the money was gone. Still had a great marketing campaign. We ended up blowing past our goal. So we had a great launch. The business was doing good. But I had this kind of bad taste in my mouth because it's like, I didn't grow up learning about this stuff and I'm getting screwed over. Yeah, it sucks. But like, how can I help other people? So I had this idea to like create this class on Udemy. It's not there anymore, but it was like how to launch a business without getting screwed over. It was something like that, like something really abstract. And I called it under the name Minority Mindset. Why Minority Mindset? Just because I always felt like I thought different than the majority of people. I didn't think too much of it. Just put it out there and I started this Instagram page for fun. And a lot of people really started resonating with it. And people on Instagram were like, hey man, can you start a blog? I'm like, I suck at writing. English is my second language. So no, I can't start a blog, but I like talking. Maybe I can start a YouTube channel. So it was just like, I'm running 5 water socks. I'm running my sock company at the time, but I was kind of just doing this as a hobby, just to kind of like help people not get screwed over the way I was. And then slowly this YouTube channel where I'm talking about random things, starting a business, making money, investing money, random things started picking up traction. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And then I hit this crossroads in my sock company because we had this the whole idea was to license the technology. Like socks are cool, but I'm not like passionate about socks. Like I don't live, breathe socks. Like it was the technology, the whole business was cool, but we had our patent denied. And it was like kind of really sucky because we had like kind of these cool connections. This guy was going to connect us to Under Armour, and we had like meetings set up, and everything kind of fell through because now we don't have a technology that we can license.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was right around the time where we hit 100,000 YouTube subscribers. So I was like, all right, so what do I do now? You know, do I want to go through with socks, which is making money? It's a good business, but I'm not very passionate about it. Or do I go with Minority Mindset, which is now starting to make a little bit of money, not as much as over here, but I'm definitely passionate about this whole mindset and this whole kind of financial education. And so I decided to go with what I enjoyed more than the money, shut down the sock company and went here. And that's how Minority Mindset grew into kind of more of a financial media company now.
That's awesome. When was that? How long has Minority Mindset been on YouTube?
I think I posted my first video in late 2015, and that was just kind of like randomly putting something out there. It was like March 1st, 2016 was when I was like, you know what, let me actually try doing this for real. So that was when it really started.
Yeah, that sounds about right just by my memory, because I started my channel in November of 17, and I think I was watching you for like a year and a half before I even, started my channel. So that sounds about right. It's crazy, man, how time flies. Now it's, January 2021, and we've both been doing it for, 4 or 5 years now. So that's awesome, man.
It feels like yesterday.
Yeah. What would you say is your biggest win coming from the channel? We can talk about your huge viral videos. You have multiple videos with millions of views, but just you personally, I see you giving back a lot to your community. I see that's part of either your culture or your religion. What's been your biggest win coming from your channel?
Man, it's just seeing the impact. Like I was in Arizona not too long ago, and I was with my parents, and I was getting acai and acai bowl. It's a really good. If you never had an acai bowl, you got to get it from the West Coast. They're not good in the Midwest. But I'm getting this acai bowl, and my dad's with me, and this guy comes up to me, and he's like, "Oh my God, are you Jaspreet?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You changed my life, man. I got my money in order. I got my savings. I got my investments. I paid off my debt." And he's just like you changed my life, and just seeing that, and it's cool because my dad's there because my dad was kind of just like, people actually watch your videos.
That's such an immigrant dad thing to say.
Yeah. So, but it was just like cool. It's like, man, just like you see it in the comments. I mean, I love hearing it in the comments. I love getting the emails. Obviously, like anytime you read that, it makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, you're going about your day and someone's just like hugging you saying you changed my life. It's just like, wow. It's like, it's really making an impact.
It's crazy. It's crazy because I get those, this is not like bragging or anything or one-upping or whatever. It's just, I get those emails as well. And like, they don't really hit you in the form of an email. Like you appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. It feels really good. And I share it. I try and share and be positive. But when I was in Austin, Texas, I was with Nate O'Brien, another YouTuber, and we were visiting my buddy. And I'm down there, and it's like this dude came up to me, and he's like, "Are you Marco?" I was like, "Yeah," It's like when they come up to you, they're all like excited and stuff. It's like I don't really like fame or care for notoriety or fame or any of that stuff. I don't care. I'm actually a pretty private person in private life. But when they come up to you and they're like, "Oh, dude, I got rid of all my debt because you guys started investing," you're just like, "Oh my God!" Like these are real people. These aren't just like comments and screen names, on a YouTube channel or emails. So I love that feeling, man. So that's awesome. What are your next plans for Minority Mindset, man? You're always coming up with something good. You always have, I know you were expanding into podcasts, newsletters, YouTube videos. What are you working on and what are you passionate about these days?
Yeah. So right now we're really just developing into a full media company. So, beyond YouTube, we've grown into a daily financial newsletter for a way for people to get free updates on what's happening in the finance and business news in a very easy to understand way. It's hard for us to read CNBC, Wall Street Journal, Finance, Yahoo every single day. And so we try to break it down every single day into something you can read in less than 5 minutes. So we have that going. We're investing pretty heavily into our blog. So we're releasing content every single day on our website, theminoritymindset.com, where it's just constant financial education. And we have a bunch of writers writing amazing content from saving to investing to debt management to mortgages to insurance to wealth management to retirement. I mean, anything related to financial education. So we're investing very heavily into that. And then the next thing that we're actually working on building right now is an app. So we're trying to create more of exclusive content in this app where it's going to be more financial education so you can access even more video content. And my goal with that is to get into even more of the financial news as well, kind of create like a daily financial news show. So that's something that we're kind of behind the scenes working on. This is the first time I'm announcing it publicly, but that's what we're doing. So we're kind of building that and just really trying to build this whole media company.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for us as like YouTube being the pillar. I think that that's just a natural way to expand. That's why I started this podcast. That's why I started my website. I think you're doing all the right things, man. So in terms of, yeah, of course. So what you're doing personally, like you don't have to disclose like, specific numbers or anything like that. But I always talk about this in my podcast. What is your asset allocation looking like? Like what is your pie? Is it heavy real estate? I know you're big into real estate. Is it stocks? I mean, is it a little bit of everything? What are we looking at here?
So my personal investments are mainly in real estate. I have quite a bit of money in the stock market, but I love real estate just because it's tangible. You create passive income, and it's something you can see, feel, touch, and control. I don't get that control in the stock market. Now, you can make a lot of money in the stock market. I have money in the stock market, but I just like real estate personally. I mean, I like the whole business of owning properties, owning something physical and tangible. And, I mean, in 2020, I actually kind of stopped a lot of investments. I mean, I put a lot of money into the stock market when the pandemic happened, but in general, like I was kind of just like, I have these other things, real estate, stocks, but I really started to funnel more money into Minority Mindset to help kind of grow the brand and grow this business into something bigger. But in terms of like, personal, you want to call them passive investments, real estate is number one, then stocks.
Nice. Yeah, I think as business owners, it's very important for us. I think our best and highest use of not only our time, but also our capital is reinvesting it into our channels or our businesses. Just because, real estate is great, stock market's great, all that stuff. You can get lucky and, hit maybe some stock that goes up 100%, 150%, but that pales in comparison to the ROI when you're really like building a business, right? So it's like, this MacBook costs money, this mixer costs money, this mic costs money, these lights cost money, but it's providing a higher quality product and reinvesting it back into your own business. So I'm a big believer in that. Cool. So
unless you hit GameStop before it pops.
Yeah, that's a different story. But then you can't sell it.
Unless
so
you get shut down.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because Jaspreet and I are recording this. It's the end of January right now. This episode will probably come out maybe like a month or two after we record this. But right now we're in the thick of the GameStop and like the basically Wall Street Bets saga with like Nokia, GameStop, AMC, not being able to sell or buy this stuff on certain brokerages or exchanges. What are your thoughts about that, Jaspreet? About the way I think about it, maybe this is a loaded term, but I think that this is market manipulation. But, you may have other thoughts. Yeah, feel free to share your thoughts on that.
So we kind of talked about this, but what is market manipulation? And this is a ambiguous term. I mean, if Warren Buffett comes out and he says he's investing in McDonald's or Coca-Cola, what happens? Well, he's already done this, but if he comes out in a new company, if he said that he's investing in Tesla, what's going to happen? Anybody who's a value investor is going to come kind of running behind him and they're going to start buying that investment as well. And that's going to run the price of that investment up. Is that considered market manipulation? Maybe, but he doesn't get in trouble for that because that's just what he's doing. You look at corporate raiders. When Carl Icahn raided the airline in, I think it was 1985, was that market manipulation where he's buying up shares of the stock just so he can break it up and sell it for his assets? Is that market manipulation? No, it wasn't considered market manipulation. When hedge funds come in and they buy up shares of a stock that's heavily shorted and then cause the short squeeze on other traders, investors, hedge funds, is that market manipulation? No, this hedge fund has access to billions of dollars in their pocket and they're doing it themselves. That's not considered market manipulation. But now we have retail traders, regular traders, amateur traders, regular people buying up shares of GameStop because you have people on Reddit, Wall Street Bets saying, hey, I'm buying this stock and I'm putting all of my money in it. And so people are kind of listening to these semi-analysts. These are just regular people who are posting what they're doing. We can call them analysts just to keep things simple. People are listening to them and buying it up. Now, this is considered market manipulation according to brokerages.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the deciding factor here? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You have regular people trying to make money because hedge funds get bailed out anytime something goes wrong. When Melvin Capital had a huge short position in GameStop. When the GameStop stock started to soar, what happened? Melvin Capital got bailed out. Two other hedge funds came in and gave them billions of dollars. That way they could stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
When 2020 happened, the Fed comes in and they start printing all this money to buy corporate bond funds. What happens? Stock market goes up. That's not market manipulation. When 2008 happens, the Fed comes in, quantitative easing. Is that not market manipulation? But now just because regular people are making money and Wall Street isn't, this is market manipulation. Yes. Let's say it is market manipulation. Fine. Then why isn't everything else considered market manipulation? It's just because who's making money?
Exactly.
It's not Wall Street, it's regular people.
I hear you, man. I literally right before this interview, I got done recording a video. It was a very candid video. So like your videos and my videos are very structured. We're in front of the whiteboard, we're teaching stuff. They all have like outlines. They're very structured. They're very well put together. But this one, man, this was my first not like a rant video, but I brought up 2008, man, because you and I are similar age. I was in college. I was sophomore year of college when 2008 happened, great financial crisis. And my portfolio got crushed, dude. I was down like 30, 40, 50%. I can't remember. This was, 13 years ago now. But basically, I remember getting crushed, and I dug so deep, man. I went into so many layers of the onion in terms of understanding, like, okay, what is the market really? What caused this crash? How come no one went to jail? It's another thing. How come people got bailed out? Why did CEOs make millions and, the everyday W-2 employee, their pension is smoked? Their retirement account is smoked. It's like people that were ready to retire had to delay it for years, just so they can retire with some sort of dignity. And I just kind of made a video on this on my channel. But yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. But when I see certain brokerages allowing people to sell a stock and not buy it, which was the case today, in my opinion, that's market manipulation from another side of things. But I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but I knew you had some thoughts on it too, and I completely agree. But yeah, the rampant quantitative easing, you have QE1, QE2, QE3, QE infinity, we just printed $4 trillion. I'm actually glad that this is a nice natural segue. You had a couple popular videos talking about either the market crash or the economy crash. I forgot the exact title, but that came out about a year ago. What are your thoughts? Do you still feel the same way you do about a lot of this soft money or easy money and, the economy in general?
Yeah. It's funny, we're really starting to see kind of a divergence between what's real and what's not real. Where is our economy right now? I think it was just yesterday that the fourth quarter GDP report came out. They're saying that the fourth quarter GDP was worse than expected for 2020. So, our economy is hurting. Our economy is not doing the best. We have millions of people still on unemployment at the time of us recording this video. Things might be different in a couple months when this releases, but at the time of us talking, our economy is hurting. Mm-hmm. Stock market's booming. And our economy probably will continue to grow. We have a lot of positivity looking. And this looks like we're turning the corner on this pandemic. It looks like we have all the stimulus coming into the economy, which will hopefully help the economy. We'll see what happens. And so we have this economy that should be growing. Mm-hmm. And then we have the markets. We'll talk about the stock market, which has already predicted that the economy is going to recover. Mm-hmm. Now, if the economy doesn't recover as fast or as good as what the markets predict, well, that's when you can see a correction. But the second issue, because there's so many, you talk about an onion, there's so many layers to this, is there's so much money out there. Mm-hmm. We're printing so much money. We're printing all these dollars. We have the lowest interest rates in the history of time. Well, all this money is printed. Where's it going to go? It's going to, people who have money, they're going to put it in the markets. It's just going there. And then you have these low interest rates. So institutions and people, institutions can borrow hundreds of millions of dollars at 3% a year and just throw it into the market.
Yeah. You
have regular people who can leverage up their Robinhood accounts and just put it in the market. So you have all this money. There's so much money out there, and you can just put it in. We have the highest margin trading happening in the history of time. I think I just saw that recently, where we have more accounts and margin than ever, and the amount of margin dollars, debt in the market is higher than ever. So there's just so much money out there. it's popping up the market. Now, if the economy keeps growing, yeah, the markets can keep growing. But if the money starts to go away, that's that would cause an issue. So it's is there going to be a crash? We'll see. I mean, there's just so much uncertainty. There's so many things going on. Thankfully, our economy is growing. I mean, this is the most important thing now, is how fast can we grow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good answer. I think a lot of that money right now is either, well, I know for a fact, I saw a chart when the first round of stimulus checks went out, it went straight back into the market. Like people, some people that really needed it for like, food, rent, stuff like that. I get all that. But a majority of it, like middle class and upper class that got the 1,200, that were eligible to get the 1,200, that went right back into their like Robinhood account, for example. So I think that's what's, a lot of that stuff is propping up. Obviously, it doesn't hold water comparing, $1,200 stimulus check compared to institutional money. I'm not saying that, but my point is that with all this easy money, all this money printing that's going on, with $4 trillion just in 2020, basically, and a little bit in 2021, our lizard brains can't even comprehend how big of a number $4 trillion is. I think
it's like if you could count $1 a second, it would take you like 11 days to count $1 million. But I think it's 35,000 years to count $1 trillion.
When you put it into time, that's when it makes sense for people, because we can quantify time. You're right. Just for sake of argument, it was like, I don't know, 1,000 hours was 3 days ago. I know I'm just making it up. I know 1,000 divided by 24 is not 3 days. But my point is, the tweet that I saw, just going off the top of my head, gave you that perspective. Like a million was, like you said, years. And then you go back 1 trillion, and that was like when we were cavemen. You know what I mean? So it was just, it was crazy, dude. But my point is that any normal person that looks at that knows the classic definition of inflation is just creating more units, monetary units, bringing that into the system, aka more dollars. Do you think we'll ever see inflation in the United States? And what are your thoughts on inflation in general? Like, what would you invest in? How would you hedge against it? Do you have any like thoughts about that at all? And sorry to put you on the spot if you don't.
No. So what are my thoughts on inflation?
Yeah, just inflation. Or how would you hedge against it?
Inflation itself is, there's a book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. They have the best definition of inflation. It's, what was it? It's the silent tax.
Yeah.
Where the people who pay the price are the people who don't understand money, but the people who understand money can be on the winning side of inflation. So how do you come on the winning side of inflation? Well, there's a few ways. I mean, if you want to talk about your institutional answer, is you invest in TIPS, your treasury bonds that are weighted to inflation. If inflation happens, this bond goes up.
Yeah, they're measured against, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, they're measured against CPI or some sort of metrics such as CPI. I know what you're talking about with TIPS. Yeah, they're treasury inflation protected securities.
Yeah. The alternative, I mean, my favorite place is real estate.
Yeah, I had a feeling you're going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite answer, because if inflation happens, the money is going to go into properties, home values are going to go up, real estate values go up, and you can also get passive income, because if you own, let's just say gold, you only make money if gold values go up. You only make money if you sell it, versus with real estate, you can make money every single month because someone's living in there and they're paying rent. It has that like
intrinsic value, or value that it can be other than just, a monetary premium. Like you mentioned gold, that's a perfect example. Like gold is it's a shiny yellow rock that can sit in like a safe in your house, but it doesn't do anything for you, right? It doesn't make dividends, doesn't make interest. But at least with the home, you can rent that out. You can, do whatever you want with it and kind of create that income stream from that asset. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. How do you feel about carrying debt? Like not just personal debt, but like investment debt. Maybe you can talk about good debt, bad debt. I don't really know your take on this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, obviously personal debt, consumer debt liability, there's a 100% no. If you're financing your wardrobe, you're doing something wrong.
What if it's Gucci though? Gucci loafers, man. Come on.
If it's Gucci, it's an exception. No, I'm just kidding.
No, we're just kidding.
Don't do that. But yeah, I mean, investment debt, here's the thing. Debt at the end of the day is a tool, and it allows you to spend your future earnings today, and you get to pay that money back plus right now 3%. So if you can grow your money faster than 3%, then yeah, you can use the bank's money and grow your money way faster, but it comes at a higher risk. Because if you cannot pay it back, if you get greedy, you get too speculative and you start buying things that you don't understand, just because you think you can get rich quick, because that is part of the environment that we're in right now, where people are trying to get rich quick, then yeah, that can cause issues, because now you are taking out leverage with FOMO, and now you have a very bad combination. But it's a tool. I mean, there's many people who became extremely successful, extremely wealthy beyond measure because of debt, and using debt the right way. But debt just increases risk. I mean, personally, I don't think there's a such thing as good debt. I think debt is a tool. It's if you use it the right way, it's good. If you don't use it the right way, that good debt is going to turn bad on you very quickly. So debt at the end of the day is a tool. And if you don't know how to use it, then someone else is going to come in and they're going to buy whatever asset you had for pennies on the dollar. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, why I've been able to buy real estate so inexpensively. It's a little bit harder now, but previously it's just because people buy properties without knowing what they're doing, with a whole lot of debt. Then something goes wrong, tenants stop paying, the property gets outdated, something happens, and now they don't have the resources or ability or know how to manage. And so now the bank comes in and they force you to sell the property below market value. And that's when somebody can come in and buy the property at a discount.
Yep. They reposition it, rent it out, and they have a cash flowing asset, hopefully. Our real estate markets are a little bit different. Like you and I are in the Midwest. I'm sure Detroit is a good cash flow market. Cleveland's a good cash flow market. What are the types of properties that you're interested in? Are you doing single family homes? Are you doing apartment buildings? Self-storage? What do you like in these days?
All things residential, single family homes and apartments. Apartments are great, but in the Midwest, the inventory of apartments there's nothing
low.
Available right now, man.
Yep.
This is just the market. And so, personally, there's residential is the easiest for me to comprehend. I've done mixed use where you have residential and some commercial, but residential is the easiest to comprehend because people will always need a roof over their heads, no matter what Tesla creates, no matter what Elon Musk creates, no matter what the West Coast can create, people are still going to need a home. And so it's the easiest to kind of wrap your head around, for me at least.
Makes sense. What did your parents say? I know you're coming from the traditional, immigrant background, Indian background. I know when I first told my dad, like, hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks at the bank and I'm, I'm going to work at YouTube. And he was just like, okay, whatever. Like he didn't understand it, like to your point where you're like, your dad's like, people watch you, that kind of a thing. It's like, go cut the grass, like they don't care that you created this like awesome, like YouTube channel. My dad's like, go paint the deck, But my point is that what was their reaction like when you told them you're doing this full time, as opposed to, I think you were in law school at the time, right?
Yeah. So it was, my parents are the hardest working people that I know. And now they're like full supporters. I don't know if they fully understand the business, but they see the success and they see kind of what's happened. And so now they're full support. My mom is actually kind of working with Minority Mindset. So it's kind of like, it's come full circle. But when they didn't really know that I was actually making videos for a long time. Like I was kind of just doing it by myself. And then they started hearing about it through the grapevine. And at first they didn't really know, but they started really supporting the entrepreneurship hustle, whatever you want to call it. When they started seeing me on the news, this was actually when I was doing the sock business. I was going to school and, they were like, just get a proper degree and get a good job. And I was like, I don't want to. And, we always had that kind of disagreement. But, I get where they're coming from because, all the things that they've seen, all the struggle that they've seen, they just want, a stable life for their kids. I get that. But, I was wanting something more. And so I kind of was going to school, but I was doing all these things on the side and they were okay with that because my grades were good. I was doing everything, the right way. I was checking the boxes, whatever that means. But I was building, businesses on the side. And then when I started getting kind of like media coverage of people covering, hey, the business success and this and that, that's when people started calling my parents like, oh, I saw your son on the news. He's doing really good. And parents were like, oh yeah, we're so proud of him. And that's when things started to change because it's like, oh, okay, they're getting some recognition.
Yep. That's the same path. It's so funny. At first, my parents were like, okay, they know he has this channel. They know he makes these videos every once in a while, that kind of a thing. But I don't think they realize how big, our channels have gotten. So when I talked to my dad, I'm like, look, dude, I'm making enough money to where I can do this full time. He was like, I support you, but he was kind of just like, he didn't get it, that kind of a thing. Cause he was a typical W-2, 8 to 5. And I love my parents. My parents are the smartest people I know. But traditional immigrant path, education gets you out of poverty, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's true.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of higher education, I love asking this question, especially to people that are entrepreneurs such as yourself. I feel like there's a place for higher education, but the ROI is kind of dwindling away. Before you get a 4-year degree, you can live middle class, upper middle class, it's worth it. Now you start to see that ROI kind of deteriorate. What are your thoughts on higher education in general?
So I'm an attorney. I went through a lot of schooling, but I don't practice as an attorney. However, some of my friends who graduated law school are making a great living, and other people are not making as much money. Like I remember, this is crazy. When I was graduating law school, there were some positions, they were recruiting at a school, paying $14 an hour. And this wasn't like a long time ago. It was like, we're talking like, I don't know, like less than a decade ago, like just a few years ago. I mean, people were talking about, you're going, some people have 6 figures of debt, and you're talking about making $35,000 a year, not even, so there's a time and a place for higher education. Yes. If you want to become an attorney, you want to become a doctor, you want to become an accountant and engineer. Yes. Now the thing that's really becoming tricky is college is no longer like, oh my God, you went to college. It's kind of just like baseline. Like back a few decades ago, college was the exception. It wasn't the rule. And so if you had a college degree, you were able to get access to all these other jobs. Nowadays, college is the rule, it's not the exception. But like as from an employer standpoint, a lot of employers, like even us, we don't really care what degree you have or where you went to college. It's just, what do you know? And so if you can go to high school and learn how to do something, let's say you like writing. If you can learn to write, go to a few websites on the internet to learn how to write for businesses, HubSpot, places like that, just learn business writing, SEO stuff. Mm-hmm. You can get the same job as somebody who went through college and did a writing degree, because when you go to work at a company, you're going to have to go learn to write for that company anyways. Mm-hmm. And they just want somebody who knows the basics, who can write without grammar mistakes and knows how to formulate a coherent sentence. And so if you have a specific thing that you want to do, then yeah, college has its place, especially, like the STEM industry. Mm-hmm. But if you're just trying to go figure out what you want to do by spending $100,000 by going to college, it's just an expensive lesson.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you need to, if you're going to make that conscious decision of going to college, sometimes, and I hate to say this, you have to almost look at it as like a business decision. What is the ROI on this degree? Like you may be the most passionate, underwater basket weaver in the world, but like, you're probably not going to get a, significant salary doing that for the rest of your life. So I hate to say that, but that really is the case. But I couldn't agree with you more, man. Just looking at bringing other team members onto Whiteboard Finance, if you're looking for a freelance writer or a graphic designer or whoever, like, I don't care if you're, if you have a finance major, writing major, English major, whatever major, if you can write well and you're helping me bring value to my viewers or listeners, like you're hired. That's all it really boils down to. So I think we're becoming more and more of like a individual, marketplace, as opposed to kind of like a commodity marketplace of like, oh, these graduates have a finance degree, they're going to work here. They have a whatever degree, they're going to work there. I think you can kind of carve out your own path a little bit easier in today's day and age.
Exactly, man. And you're going to learn on the job. And, some of our best financial writers had no financial experience before they started working with us, mm-hmm. and you work with us for a few months, and all you're doing is reading the financial news and watching financial education stuff every single day. In 90 days, you're going to know a lot of finance.
For sure. For sure. So how do you feel about having that talk about finance? Like, I feel like there's a huge pandemic, and I think you would agree with financial literacy. I feel like it's not talked about. It doesn't have to be at the dinner table. I'm just using that for sake of conversation, but it's just not talked about, right? Like, how do you feel about financial literacy in the United States, at least?
I think people are becoming more aware to the issue. I mean, it's a huge issue. It's the whole reason why I started Minority Mindset, is this lack of financial education.
Yeah.
The good news is I think people are becoming more aware of it. thanks to social media, thanks to YouTube, thanks to Google. Because before, back in the day, when we'll talk about when we were in college, when I was in college, starting college, I don't remember YouTube. The only thing I watched on YouTube was like random, like people making prank phone calls, like random things. That was all YouTube was. There was nothing else.
Yeah, cat
And so
videos. Cat videos.
If you wanted to learn something, you have to read books. And I didn't read. I used to read audiobooks. So I used to like go Barnes and Noble or Borders before Borders shut down, and I would buy the Dave Ramsey audiobooks. I read the Robert Kiyosaki. That's what it was, and so it was difficult because you had to really go out of your way to go and access these things, and you had to like spend significant amount of time, and you had to invest money in order to do that. Nowadays, you just might be scrolling through Reddit, studying whatever, and then boom, out comes something about the stock market. Now, okay, you make an investment, you lose some money, make some money, whatever. But what's going to happen then? Then you go to YouTube. How does stock market investing work? There you go. Now you start getting real education, right? So it's much more accessible, and I think, thankfully, people are becoming more aware of it. I think it needs to be taught in schools. That's why we created a full K through 12 financial education curriculum. We give it away for free. But it's definitely necessary. It's important. But I think it is growing.
Yeah, that's a positive. I think that just with social media in general, I think the more people talk about, investing, the market, things like that, that just naturally leads you down that rabbit hole. Like you said, you go from one thing to, what is, stock market for beginners or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think you naturally go down that rabbit hole, just like any other topic of conversation. What are your thoughts? This is probably like a loaded question or political question. You don't have to, not political, but what is your future outlook of just like the country in general when it comes to like, I feel like taxes, they keep going up, and I completely agree with you when you talk about inflation being that stealth tax or that silent tax. What are your thoughts about just investing in general, like in the future? Do you feel like it's going to be prohibitive with the taxes, or do you feel like there's a way that we can still be creative and get around all this like government intervention?
I think this is not new. I think this has been happening for decades. I read Warren Buffett's biography, The Snowball. And what's interesting about that book is Warren Buffett talks about his life from a young kid until like the 2000s. And you kind of hear the same issues, political issues, tax issues, decade after decade after decade. Like what we're seeing now isn't new. Now, will they play effect? Yes. Is this going to do taxes, make things harder, easier? It just depends on what side of the coin you are, where you are. But at the end of the day, the people who want to invest will find a way. There will always be loopholes. There'll always be a way to do it. Is it good? I'm a big believer. I'm really bullish in the American economy. I mean, United States has been able to overcome every hurdle for the last few hundred years. We don't have any reason not to believe that they will not continue doing that. So, and the national debt has been an issue for decades. So I believe that the United States economy will continue to find a way. I think we will have hiccups. I think we will have issues. I think we have other issues that we have to look at. I mean, China is growing so quickly. We're not growing as fast. How do we spur innovation? That's what we need to do. But I think we will find a way. I'm a big believer in this economy.
Yeah, I would agree. I think what the United States has been able to do very well is take just talent from all around the world. Like your parents are immigrants, my parents are immigrants. Just being able to use that like brain power and just be able to create, a lot of really cool things. So yeah, I definitely agree with the innovation part of it. I think we've gone away from being like that industrial powerhouse that we were, after World War II. To being more of like a service economy, to where we're creating more like service jobs and things like that. What are your thoughts on just like the middle class lifestyle in general? Do you feel like the middle class is really getting crushed, or do you feel like the middle class needs 17 iPads and maybe that's why they can't pay their bills? What are your thoughts on that?
It's both. I mean, wages have gone up, not as fast as maybe the cost of living, standard of living. Here's the thing, right? Wages have gone up, but just not as fast as things.
Mm-hmm.
They say wages have kept up with inflation, but we all know that, the inflation numbers that project isn't the real inflation that a lot of people feel.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
so, wages go up. Okay. Now we also have two incomes usually in a household, which we didn't used to have. And so, most families are making more money. And today in 2021, people are living way better than they were back in 1970. I mean, standard of living is way higher. And so we have a higher cost of living, higher standard of living. It's the price kind of we pay. So, I mean, is the middle class getting crushed? It's like, what is the definition? What does that really mean? It's harder for the middle class to buy a home.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's harder to save that money. If you want to buy a, $300,000 home and you want to put down 20% because you don't want to do, a 3% loan, then you're going to need $60,000 plus moving costs, closing costs, and all that. So that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for the average middle class person, especially in your 20s when you're young. So it's not as easy to do that. It's not as easy to have the money to retire, but it's not impossible. And this is where I think there's a big discrepancy. Is it harder? Yes. Is it impossible? No. And so, what I try not to kind of argue what is the issue. It's how do you solve the issue is, if you're in that situation, okay, what can you do to really save that money, invest your money, build that wealth? Well, you got to look at, how much you're making and how are you spending. Got to cut the expenses and raise your income. That way you can now really work on building your wealth instead of kind of getting into the game of blaming the system, blaming everybody else for your problems, because that doesn't solve anything. It doesn't get you anywhere.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that especially looking at it just from I know I keep bringing this up. My listeners are probably sick of hearing this, but if you look at our parents or grandparents, they came here with nothing, no English, no money, no nothing. And, you just kind of save up, you go to school if you can. My parents, my mom, I think has a 2-year associate's degree. My dad doesn't even have a college degree, but they're probably the smartest people I ever met. They just didn't speak English when they came here, It was a different time back then. But I feel like as long as you work hard and really kind of prioritize the things that matter, I think most people can get out of that, lower middle class to a nice middle class lifestyle. What are your thoughts just in general? Because we're coming up to about 45 minutes right now, and I'll ask you a couple more questions and we'll call it a day. And I appreciate your time as always. What are your future plans for Minority Mindset? I know you talked about the digital media and all that stuff. Any other endeavors, a podcast, anything like that?
Well, first thing is really just getting this app off the ground, which will be Q2. So that's the main thing that we're working on right now. And then really just kind of developing the content, the website, the web presence is something we're really developing, and then trying to see how we can really build our community and kind of host our own platform. So those are the things that we're working on and that we'll have hopefully soon.
Nice. Okay, since we are coming up to about an hour now, what are your thoughts, or excuse me, what is one book that you would recommend? I know you mentioned that you're not a huge reader, but just anything that you listen to, any resources, anything like that. What is that resource that you would recommend?
So I'm not a big reader, but I listen to a lot of books. I do a lot of audiobooks. Every morning I try to go on a 5-mile walk and listen to a book or one of my audiobooks during that time. So I try to listen to a lot. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I don't try to read because I'm just a slow reader. In terms of which books do I read, I've been reading a lot of biographies recently, and it just depends on kind of where you are. One of the more recent books that I read, I just talked about this in a video, but Call Me Ted by Ted Turner. Ted Turner was the founder of CNN. Mm-hmm. And whether you're a CNN person or a Fox News person or like me, you don't watch the news. One of the most inspirational books that I have ever read in my life. I mean, it's just insane how this guy built such a large company against all odds, because he built this before 24-hour news was a thing. He built this before it was very easy to, have a TV channel, a nationwide channel. So just kind of learning about how much risk and how we risked everything to kind of build this infrastructure to build that was amazing. And then another book I have to recommend, kind of similar is in terms of a biography is Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, just because I read that book in 2020. And as soon as I read that book, so Tony Hsieh was the founder of, or the CEO of Zappos, ex-CEO of Zappos. And he talks about how he built this company, not Zappos, he built another company, sold it for millions of dollars, had all the money in the world, but felt unfulfilled. He was like, I don't have a purpose in life. What's the point of all this money if you don't know your purpose? Mm-hmm. And then he talks about the journey of finding and building Zappos into this $1 billion company. And the reason why I'm recommending it is because as soon as I read the book, I was like, man, I can't wait to meet Tony, because Tony also from an immigrant family. His parents were from Taiwan. Same concept. His parents were like, you need to become a doctor. And so I really related to him. And just kind of his story was just so hilarious, so well read, like the story, the way he wrote it was so entertaining. But as soon as I read the book, like a month after I read it, he unfortunately passed away in a house fire. So have to give that book a shout out, man. That book was so inspiring. And then it was just, heartbreaking to see what happened right after.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. It was like mid or late 2020. He got caught in that house fire, I believe, or like a beach property or something. Yeah, that sucks. I didn't know he wrote a book. So yeah, I definitely need to check that out. Thank you so much, Jaspreet. How about one last question? Just if you can leave my younger viewers any tidbits just from entrepreneurship, finance, anything, what is the one piece of advice you'd give like your 20-year-old self?
Go out and do it. Ready, fire, aim. That was one, people ask me, what kind of helped you get to where you are today? I think I have a lot of room to grow, but what got me to today was being stupid, man. I was naive enough to believe in myself, even when nobody else did. I was naive enough to take a risk. Go for it. Take a risk. Just do it. You have not, especially if you're young, what do you have to lose? You have time on your side. You can make the money back. So take a risk, ready, fire, aim, and don't be scared to think big, especially when you're young. Like you might think you're thinking big, scratch it off, think even bigger.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your time, Jaspreet. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, brother.
Thank you, Marco. This was fun, man.
Oh, last thing. I know we talked about it a little bit. Where can people find you?
So you can check us out, YouTube, Minority Mindset, the website, theminoritymindset.com.
Perfect. Thank you, brother. Nice talking to you.
Likewise.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Whiteboard Finance Show. To read more about today's episode, visit whiteboardfinance.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Whiteboard Finance on YouTube. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Investing of any kind involves risk. While it is possible to minimize your risk, your investments are solely your responsibility. This show is copyrighted by Zlatic Media LLC. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or broadcasting.